Welcome back to Educator.com's English Grammar course. This lesson is about simple verb tenses. Let's get started. Alright, we're going to begin by asking, what is a verb tense? We're going to find out what they are, how they work, and what they do. We're going to look at three simple tenses: the simple present, the simple past, and the simple future. And we're also going to look at the irregular past tense and past participle. This is a set of verbs that play by their own rules. We're going to look at them in detail. And finally, we're going to learn how to use simple tenses in our writing. All right, what is a verb tense? Well, the word tense in English for grammar comes from the Latin word tempus, which means time. Verb tenses are the ways that verbs change according to the time at which the action they describe occurs. There are three simple tenses. Simple present tense describes actions that occur in the present. Simple past tense describes actions that occurred in the past. And simple future tense describes actions that will occur in the future. Some verbs, called irregular verbs, have special participle forms that create unusual tenses, and we'll look at those as well. Okay, let's begin with a review of basic verb forms. This was covered in the last lesson, but we're going to go over it briefly so we can use it here. The base form of a verb is the first person singular present tense, the form that you'd use in the sentence, I do something, or after to form the infinitive. So, the cookies smell amazing. The verb is to smell, and the base form is smell. The present participle form is usually created by adding the suffix ing to the base form. The birds are singing, to sing. And the past participle form, which we'll get into today, is created by adding the suffix d or ed to the base form. I walked to the bus stop. The verb is walk. Now, the simple present tense. For regular verbs, all persons and numbers except third person singular use the base form of the verb to describe actions that happen right now, habitual actions, and general truths. The third person singular uses the base form with s or es added at the end. If the verb ends in y, you change the y to an I and add es. So, let's look at some examples. I talk to my mother each day. It's a habitual action. I do it all the time, so I use the base form talk. He talks to himself. It's a habitual action, but it's third person singular, he, so it becomes talks. They talk to each other all the time. Again, a habitual action. Even though the subject is plural, we still use talk. I fly in an airplane. General truth. If I'm going to fly, I probably need an airplane. And a chicken flies poorly. Another general truth. We take that y, turn it into an I, add es for the third person singular, chicken. Okay, the simple past tense. For regular verbs, the past participle form is also the past tense. You form the past tense by adding the suffix ed or d to the verb's base. If the verb ends in e, you just add d. If the verb ends in y, change y to I once again and add ed. The teacher insisted that I do my homework. The base verb is insist. We added ed and we get the past tense insisted. The mouse surprised the cat. It ends in e, so we just added d. I cried. The base verb here was cry with a y. The y became an I and we got cried. While I watched the sad movie. Now, here's the problem with the past tense. There are irregular verbs in English. More than 100 of them, in fact. There are more than 100 irregular English verbs, and they take different forms for the past tense and or the past participle. They don't follow the regular rules. This is partly because English tends to borrow or steal words from other languages. Sometimes that means we borrow their forms as well. The most irregular verb in English, appropriately enough, is to be, which we use all the time. And it has past and past participle forms that change in person and in number. So, I am, yesterday I was, tomorrow, in the past I have been. So our past participle is a completely different form. You are, yesterday you were, in the past you have been. He, she, or it is, yesterday he, she, or it was, and in the past he, she, or it has been. we are, we were, we have been, and they are, they were, they have been. This is one of those you're just going to have to memorize. Irregular verbs. They play by their own rules. Some of them have the same past and past participle forms. It's very handy. They may not form them in the way that we're used to with the D or ED, but they're consistent. Have becomes had and had. Meet becomes met and met. Shine becomes shown and shown. Think becomes thought and thought. Find becomes found and found. Not too hard. Then we come to the really irregular verbs. Some irregular verbs have different past and past participle forms. So, today I begin, yesterday I began, in the past I have begun. We also have sink, sank, and sunk, swear, swore, and sworn, drive, drove, and driven, hide, hid, and hidden. And then, just because it wasn't complicated enough, some irregular verbs have past participles that are the same as the base. Today I come, yesterday I came, but in the past I have come, and it goes right back around to the base. Today I overcome, yesterday I overcame, and in the past I have overcome, right back to the base. Today I run, yesterday I ran, and in the past I have run, right back to the base. Unfortunately, irregular verbs simply must be memorized. The only way to learn them is to memorize the living daylights out of them. But the best way to make sure you retain what you learn is to read and listen a lot. Read things written by native English speakers. Listen to native English speakers who speak correctly. You will eventually develop a sense of when irregular verbs are not being used correctly. They'll start sounding wrong. Unfortunately, that's the only way to handle this one. All right, let's look at our last tense, simple future tense. Form the simple future tense by adding the helping verb will before the base form. Now, you use the simple future tense for two kinds of actions. Actions that will take place in the future. Think of them as things that are on the schedule. The judges will announce the winner tomorrow. We have the base form announce, the helping verb will, and it's used to describe something that is scheduled, it's expected to happen. We can reasonably say, yeah, that's going to happen tomorrow unless the world ends. You also use the simple future tense for actions that are predictable given certain circumstances, especially if-then statements. For example, if you stick your hand into the fire, you will burn your fingers. If fire continues to behave as it always has and fingers behave as they always have, sticking your fingers into the fire will burn them. It's predictable. So, here's how to use simple tenses. You use the simple present tense for habitual actions, actions you do all the time, actions that are happening right now as you speak, and for facts and general truths. My cat meets me at the door each evening. It's the cat's habit, happens all the time, so we use the simple present tense. I think I see my brother over there. That's happening right now. I'm thinking and I'm seeing right now, so we use the simple present tense. And the blue whale is the largest animal on Earth. It's a general fact, so we use the simple present tense. Now, you use the simple past tense for actions that occurred in the past. Yesterday, I met a friend for lunch. The concert lasted for 3 hours before it ended. This is a statement you could only make after the concert is over, so you use the past tense lasted and ended. And finally, once I was a very poor student. That implies that you're not anymore, so you need the past tense to say I was a poor student. You use the simple future tense for actions that will occur in the future, they're on the schedule, or actions that can be predicted given certain circumstances. The sun will rise tomorrow. I wrote it down on my calendar, so it's going to happen. And if you drink spoiled milk, you will become ill. That's pretty predictable if spoiled milk is actually spoiled. All right. See if you can figure out which tense to use in each of these examples. Next Wednesday, I, some form of give, a presentation in class. On a clear night, the stars, some form of shine, brightly. 2 hours ago, I, some form of begin, reading a new book. Last weekend, I, some form of run, a marathon. And he always, some form of enjoy, cooking for guests. Take a good look, pause the video if you need to. And here we have it. Next Wednesday, I will give a presentation in class. Your clue here was next Wednesday. We're describing a scheduled event in the future, so we use the simple future tense. On a clear night, the stars shine brightly. This is a general fact, so we use the simple present. 2 hours ago, I began reading a new book. Our clue here was 2 hours ago, so we use the simple past. Last weekend, I ran a marathon. Our clue was last weekend. And he always enjoys cooking for guests. Our clue here was always. This is a habitual action, so we use the simple present tense. One last round. See if you can figure out which tense of the verb to use in each of these sentences. If you lie down with dogs, you some form of rise, up with fleas. Every morning she some form of make herself a cup of coffee. In 1066, William the Conqueror, some form of invade Britain. And William Shakespeare, some form of be, a 16th century playwright and actor. And finally, next summer I, some form of travel, to Japan. Take a good look. And there you have it. If you lie down with dogs, you will rise up with fleas. If was our clue here. We're using a conditional statement. We're talking about something that can be predicted. If you lie down with a bunch of dogs that have fleas, you're probably going to get bitten. Every morning she makes herself a cup of coffee. Your clue here was every morning. That makes this a habit, so we use the simple present tense for a habitual action. In 1066, William the Conqueror invaded Britain. Our clue here was in 1066. That's definitely in the past, so we use the past tense. William Shakespeare was a 16th century playwright and actor. Your clue here was 16th century. He lived a long time ago. He's dead now. So whatever he is currently, it's not a playwright and actor. And next summer, I will travel to Japan. Your clue here was next summer. We're describing a scheduled future event, so we use the simple future tense. That's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching Educator.com.